It's the worst of the CBC for March 28th, 2022, the show where I watch the CBC so you don't have to. All right, today we're going to start with the most important story, which is the biggest omission, which is the arrest of Randy Hillier, because Trudeau loves taking political prisoners. This time it's Randy Hillier, who is arrested on 8 frivolous counts of absolutely nothing and 1 serious one, which there is no evidence for. And the way the CBC covered this is they put it on the Chiron, so I counted it as an omission, even though it was on the Chiron. They went over an hour without actually mentioning it. Now, I'm sure it will pop up later at some point today, but I did over an hour. I did my time, and it did not come up. Now, the serious one is assaulting a police officer. The other 8, we're just going to kind of ignore. The charges are basically supporting a protest that Justin Trudeau didn't like, incitement to protest. They're ridiculous, said the things about Tamara Lich, Chris Babber. It all applies under that. Nonsense, absolute nonsense. Let's focus on the one. Assaulting a police officer. He's charged with that. Is there any evidence to this? Now, if there ends up being a body cam footage of Randy Hillier throwing a punch or pushing a police officer or doing something stupid like that, okay, charge him and arrest him with that. That's an actual crime. You can't do that. But for what I saw of the Freedom Convoy, it was 99.99999% peaceful on the side of the protesters, 99.9999999% at the time. The only violence really was from Justin Trudeau's police force once he invoked the Emergencies Act to start cracking skulls and arresting people for no reason whatsoever. If Randy Hillier had assaulted a police officer as a very vocal MPP against the lockdowns, don't you think that would have made it into national news during the hysteria? Like, let's use our brains. Like, if Randy Hillier, who was trying to portray himself as one of the leaders of the convoy, was assaulting police officers when the entire media was looking for any reason to discredit the Freedom Convoy, and all the stories they have printed have been debunked thoroughly, one would think they probably would have seized on this if there's any evidence of him assaulting a police officer. But this was just pulled out of thin air last night, so I'm highly doubtful of that charge. Now, a lot of people might be pointing out that I was not a fan of Randy Hillier for a long time, and that's true. I think Randy Hillier had some pretty stupid rhetoric. But the difference between me and the federal government is, when I disagreed with Randy Hillier, even though I agreed with him like 90% of end the lockdown stuff, and when there's the 10% where I'm like, I don't agree, I would say on Twitter, Randy, I don't agree, X, Y, and Z. Yeah, he blocked me for it, but that's the difference between me and the federal government. Sometimes I'd be like, hey, his rhetoric is a bit too extreme and stupid and simplistic to really fight the lockdowns, and what he's doing is he's drawing potential support away from moderate people who would want to, support the anti-lockdown movement. He's really appealing to more hardliners, which is driving them out, where I really like the approach of Roman Babber, Belinda Carla-Harris a lot better. Right, I would say those things. But because I didn't like Randy Hillier's rhetoric sometimes, I do not want him arrested. I just wanted to make a joke about him on Twitter. That's my punishment. But Justin Trudeau's like, no, throw him in jail. So it's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. There's really nothing more to say. I mean, we're freezing the bank accounts of Andy Lee, a journalist. We're arresting anti-lockdown politicians like Randy Hillier. And, then they're detaining Tamara Lich without bail indefinitely on the will of a longtime political friend of Justin Trudeau. It's insane. It's absolutely insane what this country has come to. Honorable mention on the failure to cover is the Liberals, Melanie Joly, saying it's within the purview of the Foreign Affairs Ministry, which it's not, to censor the internet. This is a solution to everything in the Trudeau government: censor the internet. How will that help Ukraine? No idea. But, Trudeau. Now, because this show is completely out of order, and I'm doing it my way, because I'm the captain now, we're going to do the Rosemary Barton scale. Spoiler alert, it was a 7.5 today, and that's only because I took 2 points off, because before their parliamentary budget question period, they had their analysts come on and say, oh, I'm really going to predict there's going to be lots of questions about the F-35s Canada wants to buy. And she did correctly identify the chronology of the F-35s the Liberals want to buy is they shut down a Conservative plan to buy good fighter jets prior to the Liberals winning election in 2015. They killed that to buy decrepit old fighter jets the Australians didn't want, and they took secondhand crappy jets. And listen, all modern warfare is aerial warfare, basically, so you need good fighter jets to deter a country like Russia, and this is the reason why a no-fly zone enacted by NATO now will start World War III in a nuclear apocalypse, is because American jets and NATO jets are so far superior to Russian Air Force that if the Americans got into an actual dogfights with Russians, they'd roll the Russians immediately, which would put the nuclear option on the table for Vladimir Putin. And yes, our nuclear arsenal might be better, but it doesn't matter because we're both going to destroy the world, and that's a bad thing. Now, if you wanted to, Joe Biden was so brilliant, he would have put troops in Ukraine before Vladimir Putin invaded, if you really knew what was going to happen as like a training exercise. But he's an idiot, and he's a puppet of Putin because he's an ideologue who won't give up his stupid left-wing, isolationist, America's the problem for everything, we can hug the terrorism way worldview, and he's going to help Vladimir Putin by easing all the sanctions he's put on him through the back door by trying to get an Iran deal to play the same Obama thing, which drives me crazy. Okay, moving on. The actual worst covered story today is what happened in that question period is when they started talking about the carbon tax, and then, the conservatives were raising, like, you're inflating the money, you idiots. And the liberals kept being like, actually, 8 out of 10, it was a French guy, so I talk like this. 8 out of 10 Canadians are going to make money off the carbon tax, blah, 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 blah. Okay, if you believe this, you have severe, 3 options. You have severe brain damage. Call 911, get an ambulance, you're suffering from an aneurysm, go to the hospital right now. 2, you are so incredibly stupid that you're having trouble breathing. So, inhale, exhale, okay? And as I keep talking, do that again. So, inhale, then exhale, complete that pattern forever, or else you're going to die. Option 3 is you're just maliciously lying, which is what the liberals are likely doing. So they're purporting the stats of like, oh yes, the 8 out of 10 households, because we're giving them a gas rebate. 1, the purpose of a tax is to disincentivize behavior, as said by the liberals, but they're actually claiming that you're making money off of this. It's beyond ridiculous. It's beyond ridiculously stupid. But we're going to have to go back to grade 11, day 2 economics. And this is really, for Patrick Brown and Jean Charest, the red Tory fools who I absolutely hate. And this is why the red Tories should never be leading the party, because they cave into the carbon tax, and they know it won't work. The reason why the carbon tax will never work, it cannot work, is because gas, oil, energy is an inelastic good. Day 1, supply and demand. All right, as demand goes up, price goes up. As supply goes up, demand goes down. Price goes down, right? Optimal price is where supply meets demand, blah, 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 blah. Day 2, elasticity. Okay, goods that are highly elastic, which means the demand is highly, highly susceptible to shift in price. Like a video game. You increase the price of video games, people won't want to buy them because it's a total frivolous luxury good unless you're super rich and you don't care about money. Highly inelastic goods are like food, which you need, and oil, which you need. Everything is made and put with oil, okay? So yes, there are more ways the increase of the oil price affects you than just at the gas pump. So yes, you see the gas pump go up. So yes, you might get rebated on your gas, but you're not getting rebated on the fact that each trucker now has to pay so much more for gas. So the cost to ship food from point A to point B increases, by whatever factor. But also to grow the food, because diesel to grow the food increases exponentially, and then the diesel and the energy needed to make the fertilizer is up 300%, and just to grow the food, like the amount of crazy increases to the price it costs people to farm is insane. And then because you're going to be pricing standard farmers out of the market, where it becomes financially inviable to grow food, you're then creating more food shortages, but which will increase prices. This is hyperinflation. Okay, this is stupidity. You cannot curb demand for a product that is highly inelastic by taxing it. You cannot do that. This is why Patrick Brown and Jean Charest should never be allowed within 200 meters of the Conservative Party leadership race. It's because they cave to this idea, and they know it's wrong, but they just want to give this sort of climate change rhetoric to the idiots in the CBC, who need to be defunded. So yes, the CBC let the liberals get away with the lie that people are actually making money off the carbon tax, and the conservatives are claiming they're not, but the liberals are claiming they are. So who knows the answer? Daniel does. Daniel knows the answer, and so does everyone who doesn't need to be told how to breathe. Well, that's it for this episode of The Worst of the CBC. Thanks for coming along. And, like, share, subscribe, push all the buttons, or else you're going to have a carbon tax of $1 billion per ton of carbon. And then climate change will be over. So diversity is our strength. In order to fight Russia, we need to be more like Russia. Justin Trudeau forever. Allahu Akbar.